All right. Hey, everyone. We're just going to give it a few minutes as we let all the attendees join before we get started. Everyone's joining now. Beautiful. Looks like a good bulk are in.
Awesome.
Give it about another 30 seconds or so before kicking it off. That's a good idea with a cup of water. Probably should have done that.
Yeah, I've got my coffee and my water. I have a whole staff here, though.
Yeah, you've got attendees at
Yeah. I mean, it took a little while to put my lipstick on in the traffic lane. Turns out that's what the one was doing before me on the Bake Highway, Bake Road.
You got a little powder on there too. I think I need a team.
No, I don't have powder on here.
Powder? Hmm.
Epicurus, who I met with yesterday. I learned that all the face wash I've been using was scraping my face because Epicurus is the best product ever. But I use Zio's Gentle Cleanser, and Max, the CEO, is actually a scientist, PhD, developed it. He goes, so like, and I'm like, how can I use the oil serum thing? He's like, you're supposed to put that on dry, idiot, and then you get in the shower and it washes off the dirt but leaves the moisture. And so
Well,
I was
now
like,
you know.
they're like,
No,
really? You started using that without getting instructions? I go, I'm a guy.
fair call. I mean, I don't know that. So you're
Mm.
learning about skin today and also behind the scenes of InBrace. But it looks like we got a good amount of our attendees that we were expecting in. So I will go ahead and kick it off. Thank you,
Cool.
thank you to everyone who is an attendee right now. We appreciate you guys taking the time out. Welcome to the continuation of our WTF. Welcome to What's the Future with InBrace series. This webinar, as we know, comes in high demand from a lot of our providers, and we really want it to be a vehicle for access to Clint to answer questions and concerns directly from all of you. We did not have any pre-agenda to this, so all of the discussion today is based off questions that came directly from you all as you guys registered. We do have a chat feature, so just a couple nuances here in regards to the panel style and the webinar that we have today. There's a chat feature, so feel free to input any questions. We'll monitor. We have a team that helps us that will monitor throughout the discussion and input those questions. And if time permits, we'll have a Q&A at the end. Also, at the end of the session, we'll have a survey that's sent out to you. So please, please, please let us know your genuine sentiments. And if there's any questions that we're not able to get to today on this call, we'll make sure we'll follow up. So please put your questions in there. With that, and without further ado, I am no stranger to everyone on this call, and I'll be the host today. Dr. Tera Poole, Director of Clinical of InBrace, leading our clinical and design teams. And I am super, 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 super excited to have Clint Carnell, the CEO of InBrace, on this call with me today. Actually, maybe I should say, Clint, you are honored to be in the presence of
That's
all my
true.
colleagues and some of the amazing orthodontists that we have on this call. So thank you for being with us today. With a little bit of background for our providers, I know, and I can see some names here. We have a couple providers on the East Coast, so I think I want to shout out that Clint is a Duke grad, where he was an all ACC soccer standout. But despite his soccer star days, after that, Clint is a serial entrepreneur, having led, founded, and taken public multiple companies in the consumer health tech space. Some of these companies were private, couple equity, and some even out of his garage, but within the med device space. So some of those examples include Charleston Renal Care, which he founded and sold to DaVita, Bausch & Lomb, which he led the U.S. surgical businesses during their LASIK development, Beauty Health and its flagship brand, which I know, and I think most of the providers will be familiar with, Hydrofacial, which went from $170 million acquisition to a public company with $4.5 billion market cap. Nonetheless, while InBrace may be his first foot into the orthodontic space, he has been on the provider side with Orange Twist and worked closely with doctors and surgeons during his experience, which made him into the CEO that he is today. And I have the pleasure of working with. So again, Clint, thank you for being on this call.
Thanks, Dr. Poole. Two things I took away from that. One is when your bio is that long, it just means you've gotten old. So the double nickels
Wise.
is
You're wise.
55 later this month. So super excited for that coming up. And the other thing is you are impossible to compete with on Zoom because you are just made for TV. You just always make me feel like, gosh, I got to get my act together. Listen, everyone, thanks so much for joining. I recognize you're taking time out of your busy schedule, and we would hope, Tara and I, that this is really interactive. If I'd really encourage you to ask the questions that are on your mind, or that you want to ask the InBrace folks when they're out there in the field. My goal is to answer them straightforward. If I'm uncomfortable or I don't know, I'll tell you that as well. So just consider this having a one-on-one. A little bit about me and how I view this and how I ended up at InBrace, just to give you some context. My journey wasn't uncommon, but it has been a little unusual. I was introduced to the company during the pandemic. I was running Hydrofacial. We were planning on going public, and the board members who I knew said, "Hey, we have this amazing private company. They're going through a raise. The founder, Dr. John Pham, is an engineer, ortho. We think it's very a white space. We think the company could be worth tens of billions of dollars, but we need an entrepreneur that's been in kind of this consumer healthcare space." And that may be new for some of you to hear, but I think there's an emerging group of companies where the product may be very much healthcare. It's a provider, it's very medical, it's providing a clinical outcome, but there's also a consumer's choice in mind, and there's a lot more access to Dr. Google and now Dr. Chat GPT and
Or TikTok, Dr.
yeah,
TikTok.
Dr. TikTok, Dr. Instagram. So it's very frustrating for providers because you don't want ChatGPT dictating what you provide, but also consumers have information, and companies like InBrace are able to do that. I came up actually through that space. So my background is with Charleston Renal Care. I was an M&A person in dialysis, and at 29, I decided to spin off and start my own dialysis centers because the doctors said, "You seem like a business guy, and we have patients. How about we smush that together?" And so at the wise age of 29, I started my own dialysis centers. I did that because I was buying centers and they weren't run very well, and they were in bad shopping centers, and I didn't think we were treating patients the way I would expect to be treated. We were treating them like they were dying, not like they were going to live. So we built a better mousetrap and sold that back to DaVita 5 years later. 2005, actually ran Bausch & Lomb Surgical at the ripe age of 30 to 35. At the same time, I had my dialysis centers, and I gained my executive chops. But what was more important is excimer lasers were taken off. And so I was there on early RK, ALK, and LASIK. And I'd come through ophthalmology in my 20s. But what I learned there is at one time, and it's happening to many of you, where private equity is coming in buying ortho and dental practices. Essentially 3 providers came in, 2 of them went public. They were national chains, and the doctors were really upset. They're going to take our patients. What happened is the 3 providers, national chains, exposed more patients to the opportunity to have LASIK surgery. And so while they did a lot of excimer laser treatments, all of the doctors' businesses came up 20 to 30%. And I think we see that with the aligned technologies that are out there in the world, like people come in and ask you for that product by name, and you make the choice, right? Traditional brackets or wires, or Align, or another technology like that, or increasingly InBrace. So that was very informative to me. And in 2005, then I got into aesthetics, which at the time nobody knew was a thing. And now I think we all casually talk about Botox like it's diet and exercise. And I've been fortunate through that. In 2015, I actually started the chain of med spas, became the 4th largest in the country. Hardest darn thing I've ever done. And learned a lot more about the idea of how do I go find patients, turn them into clients of ours, hire a staff, and we have coming up on 19 locations. And then, as Tara mentioned, I ran Hydrofacial. I've taken a couple public, couple private equity, and a couple out of my garage. That's only to say that what I'm going to share with you is not, first-time CEO, believe me, buy from us, I need you. I want to explain a little bit about where the company is, what we've gone through, and my vision of where we are. Does that sound good, Tara?
Yeah, that sounds perfect. And thanks for even more in-depth background, more than I even knew about. So
Yeah. The last time I've been called a soccer standout, like I don't even know how to trap the ball.
I don't know. We still haven't gotten on the soccer field. I think I might.
Yeah. And by the way, I recognize some of our orthos may have gone to Carolina. If you're a Duke-hater, I get it. My daughter actually decided to go to Carolina. So I just spent $200,000 to send my daughter to Carolina. And so that's how pragmatic I am as a CEO. She isn't in the will anymore. My son will be inheriting all of our money, but that's okay. She made her decision.
She made her decision.
She did. So WTF, one is I have been the CEO for a little over 2.5 years. I was a board member prior to that, and essentially I've got a lot of respect for John Pham and Dr. Tong, Dr. Lee, Dr. Andres, all the characters that you've seen on WTF. You probably haven't seen me other than maybe a name as a CEO, and that was very purposeful. One is I am a firm believer that founders and the original purpose and vision of the company is incredibly powerful. And so when John recruited me to the board, and then when I came in as CEO, I thought it was important that our orthodontists stayed the face of this emerging technology. And my goal was really to build the company behind the scenes. And I think for the most part, I'm going to share with you that journey we've been along and some of the challenges we've had. But essentially, I am not a corner office, ivory tower typical CEO. I grew up through sales and marketing. I own two practices, one in dialysis and one in aesthetics. I hadn't been in ortho. I've learned a lot, but I do have teeth. So I am a consumer of these products. And my goal had been to be behind the scenes while John really stayed out front and increasingly Tera out there. And I think you'll increasingly see our orthodontists and many of you be the face of this company because I believe this is something we need to bring to the market together.
Yeah.
Why I'm at the front of this now is because we've just gone through completing a very difficult fundraising environment. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of that journey and some of the trials and tribulations of InBrace, but why the path forward in the future, literally the future is so much more visible to me and why we're just really, if you're a football fan, inside the red zone, the 20-yard line. So
I'm
that's
glad you did football there and not golf, because I could follow that analogy.
all that. Golf, just know that you need to be able to drink and swing a club without hurting any of your friends at the same time. After that, it's just varying degrees of bad or good.
Usually I'm whiffing, but we'll
That's
get
all right.
there.
Now, that's here. I'll start out with the thing that everybody talks about orthodontists. They don't want to work that hard. I always hear 3 days a week and they golf the other two because they make a lot of money. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I believe that it's one of my favorite specialties so far. I appreciate many of you bringing me into the community. And look, our goal here, as we talk about InBrace, will be to provide your patients and you better options. An option I think that can increasingly be the future of teeth straightening. But I'll save all my orthodontist jokes as we go along. That's the opener.
Keeping on my toes on that one.
Right.
So we'll go ahead and kick it off. Despite that background there, I've been fortunate enough to have a small window into the landscape of private equity through my own experiences and trajectory within health tech. InBrace being, I think this is now my third health tech company leading the clinical team. But having been on both sides within health tech and also private practice, the clinical space, when we're in private practice as doctors, right, we own our practices, we run our practices, so we know all the ins and outs of the business and we have control over that. You've spoken about your trajectory to get here to the now, but can you speak a little bit about what the normal trajectory of a company in private equity is like, being that we've gone through the last couple of months? Like, is it normal? And what should we and my colleagues expect kind of moving forward in this space with this type of company?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, it's unfortunate, but they say only 1 out of 10 small businesses survive. And then most you don't know about, but small businesses make up a disproportionate amount of the American economy, right? So I'll just say that. And orthodontists, many of you obviously are small business people. And you spent a lot of time getting through school. You decided to abuse yourself and specialize. Many of you have a lot of debt. And then, you pop out of school and somebody says, well, go start your own practice. And you're a small business person already. You become not only the primary, revenue driver in your practice, but the CEO, chief bottle washer, HR, and CFO. So I'm not going to say a lot of things that are going to amaze you, but I would say that I think this is my 7th business as CEO. All of them have been through near-death experiences. I opened Charleston Renal Care, put every dime I had into it. We opened it, and a month later, 9/11 hit, and the federal government didn't reimburse us for 6 months. We almost went BK, right? And we survived and later ended up having a good exit. Orange Twist, has been angel funded until private equity came in. So 8 years of my friends, family, and I funded it. And we've had, I think, 5 near-death experiences. Solta Medical, we did a very large acquisition after we were public, a merger of equals. And then the '08 crisis hit. We fought to keep the company alive. We did. And we had a successful exit to Bausch and Lomb, ironically. Beauty Health, we were going through a $1 billion acquisition, and we moved the deal a quarter, and a little thing called the pandemic hit, and we went from 1,000 employees to 75.
Wow.
We rebuilt it, took it public, and it was worth $4.5 billion. And I think InBrace is no different. I even had the pleasure early in my career of meeting a guy named Reed Hastings. You may have heard of, that was the CEO of a small company at the time called Netflix, which was going to be a thing. And I'm so dumb, I did not buy enough stock.
It's a small company. Now it's
And even remember, it's only been, I think, just a little over 10 years that, remember when Netflix did a thing called streaming and the value got cut in half?
yeah.
And I called my friend who was the head of HR for them. I said, is Reed worried about getting fired? Is the board going to fire him? He said, no, he brought the future forward a little too quickly. Streaming is going to be a thing. I think this is, check my notes, but I think it's like 2012 or 2014 that streaming is when Netflix went and the stock got cut in half. And, now it seems weird. When's the last time we got a DVD in the mail, right? And then later she said, hey, but they bought a Hollywood studio. We're down here buying a Hollywood studio. I'm like, Hollywood studio? She goes, yep, we're going to be the largest independent or the largest producer of original content in the world. And Netflix now is.
Yep.
But at one time you could have bought it, split adjusted for $8. So it'd probably be like 50 cents now. Intuitive Surgical, I was around Lonnie when they did that. He said they were 1 week away from bankruptcy. And Intuitive has gone on to be one of the most successful. Even Align, I'm sure many of you are familiar with that story, but they were founded in 1997. They went public, I think, in '01, but in '05, as opposed to going to a small company called Thermage, which became Solta, I was going to go to Align, and I just could never quite get together with the CEO at the time, and the stock was $2. It was a $100 million market cap. So you could have had Align. You could have had Align in 2005, September 2005, for $2 a share.
Would have been nice.
Adjusted at a $100 million valuation. I think it's worth 20 billion right now. By the way, you're going to hear me say, I think we're better than Align and Invisalign specifically. But we owe them a great debt of gratitude, because I think they opened up the consumer to new opportunities. They've helped many of you provide options for consumers that balance aesthetics with treatments, and they poured a lot of money into the space, including the development of really what we now is digital dental or customization, mass customizations. But make no mistake, we think we've got a better mousetrap for you, and we increasingly want to bring that to market. But I would say all of those companies had near-death experiences, and InBrace is no different. We have actually, a lot of orthodontist friends of mine just can't believe this number. Most medical device companies are less than 85 million or less than $50 million in revenue. So 85% of medical device companies, all medical device companies, are less than $50 million in revenue, and all lose money. And so multiples tend to go up and down based upon how Wall Street is viewing them. This company is part medical device, but part tech. And essentially, just like Align had to raise a couple $100 million, we have actually raised $238 million. So what's different about this, why we're just not a medical company, is what the orthodontists on this call do, and you already know this, is pretty magical, very complex, and you're essentially architecting the body to do what you want it to do, and that's build a healthy, beautiful smile and a great set of teeth. And what we're trying to do is take the complexity of what you do in your brain and with your hands and make it super simple. And I know you've heard John a lot of times use Tesla's self-driving or autonomous driving feature. It's not that far off. I mean, ultimately, what we want to do is have our technology work alongside you to provide the very best compliance with the product we think consumers increasingly want. And that is straight teeth without advertising it to everyone else. So, we had a near-death experience. I'm going to dig into that a little bit. But the journey we've gone through is that way. And as the next soccer player, I'll tell you, I heard a Pele quote. If I mess this up, just please take it as directional.
Can I look it up?
Pele, if you don't know, is still probably the greatest soccer player ever to live, including Messi, I think. But they once asked him, what was your favorite victory? And he was a very thoughtful guy. He grew up in the barrio, and he said the hardest one, which is a way of not answering the question. But I do think, and despite the journey we've been through the last 2 years, I believe in InBrace. I believe that the idea has just gotten bigger. And the more challenges we've had are representative of what we can overcome. And I want to thank you for being on this journey with us. But the the decade of developing this, the $238 million invested, the massive commitment by our orthodontic community just makes the victory that much sweeter. And my view of the company is not diminished whatsoever. And I'll talk about the broader vision, but simple answer is, yeah, this sucks. But that does. And I'm sure there were years when you were specializing or even thinking about going into dentistry or, like me, I did not qualify for medical school because I was staying out too late, partying and making my way through a good school. It probably was not, I didn't deserve to go to. So I have a lot of appreciation for what you've sacrificed if you're an orthodontist. And I'm sure you've had those dark moments where you had to push forward, and it's no different than when you're in business.
Yeah, that delayed gratification.
Yeah.
And I like how you kind of talked about the tech side, and also how we speak a lot on internally as a team about putting our ortho brain into the software, into the computer, into that wire.
Yep.
And also in regard to the ortho brain, kind of what stuck out from me from what you just said is, yes, near-death experiences are common for businesses, but also for orthodontists, it's scary, right? If you think about orthodontic treatment, our specialty, things take time to complete. Our treatment takes anywhere from 6 to 12 months to sometimes even 2 to 3 years. So when you think about finishing a case or starting a case, really, specifically around InBrace, like, you want to start a patient in a given modality, but you also want to bet on them finishing in that same modality, right? Outside of just the expenses of it, but for the patient management. And so with that, I also understand if some orthodontists or some providers on this call get nervous, as you say, that there are near-death experiences. So with that, just a follow-up there to that question of, like, based on the title of our series, like, what is the future of InBrace? And for those providers who are thinking, oh, shoot, I need to put my patient in this modality, I want to, and I want to bet on them finishing in that modality. So what is our future right now?
Yeah, I love you guys, and I'm super frustrated with you at the same time. It is a love frustration relationship, and let me expand on that a little bit. What orthodontists do and the manner in which you do it, and also the temperament. I mean, I don't know how they screen, but it's really a wonderful specialty. I mean, I've spent a lot of my career with plastic surgeons and with ophthalmologists and orthopedic surgeons, and I would say you guys are my favorite by far. And it's also been interesting to me as I've gone out there and I'm like, I knew that didn't work in Gen 1 or in Gen 2. We had the high force brackets and then we had things that happened, open up spaces we didn't expect,
Yep.
teeth moving the way we didn't expect as we went out with Gen 2. And a lot of times I'd make the call or I'd get the information back. I'm like, oh no, they're fine. They just want us to fix that. I'm like, really? Like, I'm used to getting chewed out, up and spit out and apologizing. And I would say that and Tera and John would educate me like, oh, we're used to doing this. Like, things move and then we fix it and we move it back. It's bones. So I think there's something about the temperament of orthodontists that is really a pleasure as an executive that's a non-medical professional to work with. I would say, and this surprised me, I did not know this getting in, is like if something works in aesthetics or ophthalmology, the adoption curve, the Rogers adoption curve is super fast.
Mhm.
If you have something that works that patients seem to like and a plastic surgeon, dermatologist, med spa can make money, you can get the company to 30 million in a second. Now, sometimes it's a little bit of a flash in the pan. I'm sure there's some crossover doctors in this group that also do aesthetics. You got to be careful in that space because sometimes things are just like flavor of the day.
Yeah.
And so, but as an executive, when you get those early indications, your product works, consumers like it, doctors want to put it in, you're like, I got a winner here, and investors start pouring money in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the world I've come from, primarily ophthalmology and aesthetics. And I didn't realize like many of you have your patients in their journey for 2, 3 years. And so you don't want a problem on your hands for 2 to 3 years.
Absolutely
And
not.
so the idea to a sales and marketing guy, right, that I'm going to put this in and I'll tell you next year if I like that one patient, I'll put two, and then the next year
Let's
I'll
see how
put
it plays out. Yes.
it's I understand why you do it. I will say, and this is where we start to develop a relationship with the community, is it's also why people have a tough time investing in ortho. It's why the market often goes to the general dentist quickly. because they adopt faster. And I think we've got to, in a shared way, work through that together faster. Because you'll see at one time when I came in, we were actually burning $6 million a month to build the factory, to build the software, to improve the smile design, to ensure that we had less wire breakage, understand how to build, independent bonding, specialty wires, all the things that probably seem either easy to you or like, why couldn't they do that faster? But we were burning $6 million a month.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money to anybody. And so our burn is significantly less. You'll even see that when we were selling you Gen 1 or Gen 2 until really recently, we were losing up to $3,000 or $4,000 a case.
Mhm.
So I know those conversations like, can I get a deal like I do with, Align or my, Damon bracket and braces system? Well, yeah, but the deal is if we're losing $3,000 to $4,000 a case, we're just going to lose a lot more. Like we need money to continue to invest in building this company. So I can appreciate many times it get comfortable. I think the nature of our technology and the fact that you've seen things like this before now, digital dental is not going away, but almost every one of the companies in the space is struggling from valuations because this is more of a software company than it is a medical device company. And the slowness of adoption, the fact that you don't give this as an option when patients are asking you for what you go into, is a real problem for these companies because it's very, very expensive to launch into dental. The other thing I think we need to concern with is, this was founded by orthos. I'm committed to keeping this product with orthos. You do the majority of teeth straightening. You're getting your butts kicked right now by general dentists. And I think just as a community, if you want us to stay with you, we need a commitment from you. Because I think that's where a technology like this that has the compliance that you'd find in traditional braces, but has the aesthetic benefits that I think are superior to anything out there, including any aligners, and give the patient the lifestyle benefit. I don't understand why we're not in every conversation about the option. And so you're going to increasingly hear from me. I want you to give it as an option because if we show that we can incorporate it into an ortho's practice, the patients love it, the staff likes it, the ortho gives a good reference, we will attract investors, and this will be one of the great success stories. But that slowness of adoption is what everybody will tell you. Many of you probably don't get the access to Wall Street. I would love to not have access to Wall Street, but multiples and dental are just in the tank, and it hurts you. We just are the ones on the front line. It hurts you second. Like there's a lot of technologies that you'll never see because we can't attract investors for it. And InBrace is right on that bubble. We're really fortunate to bring the investors along we did here. That answer the question, Tara?
It does. It does. And it starts to lead into a question coming later in regards to what we can do to help. We meaning my colleagues and providers on this call to help with the forward trajectory of the company. So we can get that into that towards the tail end. But something else that you had called out is the kind of tinkering or slow to adopt, because we do want to see how things play out. That's how we learn in residency, right? You learn by watching, oh, let me put this rubber band on, let me do the spin, let me do this, put this spring here, and you're seeing how the movement plays out over time, right? I think outside of seeing how things or the outcome, the clinical outcome of the case comes up in terms of adoption of InBrace, another kind of blocker, specifically during this time period, and I know what I dislike, to your point, you joked about working 3 days a week and playing golf the other 2 days of the week. But another piece of practice that I know I dislike and my colleagues is also the patient management, right? Like could be see 80 patients a day. It's that one patient or that one scenario that can throw the day completely off or throw the week off, right? And that disruption really, really prevents us from wanting to dive in. And a huge piece of what's occurred in the last couple of months is a disruption to the practice and the workflow, specifically because of those lead times, right? And turning cases around, needing to reschedule, having those hard conversations, which providers we dislike. So where are we at in terms of those lead times? And again, what can we expect in regards to those lead times moving forward? Because I know what I expect as a provider, right? But what is InBrace's kind of promise moving forward?
Yeah, no, it's a great question and a fair one. So let me give a little context because this was new to me when I came in, and many of you know some of the early players. I mean, it's my understanding like Gen 1 was like 4 months sometimes, right? They were, and some, I'm sure we have some of our early founding orthos on here, and I really appreciate the ability to tinker with us. And that was unacceptable, right? But we were basically custom making these things. It was like ordering a suit, or a custom car. And so we were there. Then one of the reasons John did a wonderful job raising $102 million. We actually had to give more money back in that D round. And it was $102 million. And the idea was to build the plant, which I'm in right now, and to increasingly automate this. I mean, I'd really encourage you, and we will start hosting our orthodontists for plant tours, meet some of the team. I'd love to have you to Southern California. I know all my Northeasterners are booking that right now on their January and February travel schedule, but we'd love to have you California to see the plant. But we had to build our plant. We have transferred parts of our smile design to India so that the team there of orthodontists is working on the smile designs for you to approve when you get up in the morning. We've been having to improve the user interface, improve the performance of the product, learn from you, because our product really is AI driven. The more teeth we do, the better our system gets at it. And when we launched Gen 2, we spent a lot of money to get that delivery from scan to completion back to your practice in like 12 to 14 days. Because that's what the market leader was doing at the time. And so we felt a real desire to get that to you. Unfortunately, as we ended up in funding challenges, and we were making staffing challenges, we had to prioritize to keep the lights on. And I'm sure you've had to make budget decisions either for your family. I know many of you probably, when you were doing your fellowship or specialize, and we're like, hey, I got to split the pack of ramen noodles, right? And I got to delay my apartment.
College days.
Right, college days. And so we were having to make those same decisions. They were painful, but one of it is that we got really jammed up with our, really with our DEs, with, IRs, with just being able to get a case back. Because we've completed the funding, we've got our staffing levels straight. You now can expect that we're back to a more normal process where you're inside of 3 weeks. I think that's about appropriate for the scheduling time. And we'll continue to bring that down. And as we get back on a full commercial footing back there in the marketplace, we'll look to decrease that again, based upon feedback from orthodontists. But I think we're hearing from most folks now that we've cleared out a lot of the DEs and IRs, as of, I think, this past week. We should be getting back to that every 3 weeks. And you should feel comfortable putting your patients in this treat and being able to finish. Look, most of our cases, many of finish in less than 12 months. Which is outstanding. We can treat all classes of malocclusions, and you can use this as a hybrid in all your treatments. And I think those are things we didn't even know, a year ago, a year and a half ago. And if you've been along the journey with us, we did have that hot potato treatment, right? I came in May, and then by like July, I start hearing about the second wire being put in and started smelling a little smoke.
Yeah.
So like it or not, I made the decision to stop bringing on new orthos in September and focus on fixing the high force bracket issue. I will tell you, like, my wife was in the case. She was like, this is awesome. She said a little bit of pressure, right? Our consumer scores, our patient scores, your patient scores, just so you know, an NPS is like, how likely are you to recommend this to a friend or family member, get it done again, is near 80. That is unheard of. That's like Starbucks, Disney, Tesla. That's one of the best consumer brand scores. And so if you're not putting InBrace in, I think you're losing a tremendous marketing opportunity to grow your practice. Because even in our own in-studio, when we put somebody in InBrace, nobody in the family goes into braces or aligners. So ultimately, you build your practice off of referrals. And I think InBrace is what you want moms saying at the PTA meetings, and dads and moms when they're in the field. Every one of our executives, except for me and one other, have been in this. I need to get in. I've got some extractions I have to do. But this is a great product and the consumers want it, right? We want to deliver that to you on time. And we've got to continue investing in this to make it a better product. But that's essentially what happened. And it was super painful because just as we were getting going, we had to do that. But hopefully you feel like from us, when we heard it was a hot potato, because your staff member is upset and flustered because you got patients that are pissed off. And so you come in, and I'm sure you're all super sweet to them, but then you're frustrated because you're worried about bad Yelp scores, right? You're worried about, people griping and saying they had to cancel their blah, blah, blah. Is we sent our TISs out there to be chairside with you. And I don't think any other company in the space has done that. We documented every case, just like we were sitting in your practice. And all through these changes, we tried to make sure you have the the integration specialists in your practice. And I think if you look at our NPS scores now from the community and from the staff, they're like at 30 and 38. I think those will just get better. But our goal is to be inside your single and dual arch scheduling column. And I think when we last measured that, we were in like 99% of cases. So if you're new on this call, integrating your practice, making money, patient flow, I think it feels like we've kind of got that. We've got the delivery down to 3 weeks, so you should be able to schedule. And I think when you look at teeth doing what we didn't expect, that's increasingly a risk that we've mitigated. Wire breakages, debonding increasingly, but building the future should be together. And I would really encourage you not to be a late adopter on this, because I can just tell you from my other businesses, excimer lasers, aesthetics, the providers that aren't in the tinkering stage, but are early in the Rogers adoption curve, when they get that and they get the referrals, they take off and their practices are just more successful. And second, third, and fourth place just never catch up. So if you're interested in growing your practice, this is something I'd put in my practice if I was an orthodontist. And I'm not a medical professional, I'll make that really clear, but I run practices that are medical professional. And when we did dialysis and we made them clean, educated the staff, put them in great scrubs, treated the patients like they were going to live, we kicked the ass of a multi-billion-dollar national that didn't do it. With Orange Twist, when I started it with real estate, a staff that was well-trained, great scrubs, and we focused on the patient's journey and treated it with hospitality. In 3 years, we became the 4th largest med spa chain in the country. So I'll eat my own dog food on this, but I think if you're like sitting back thinking, is InBrace going to be a thing? It's a thing. And I would just encourage you to work with us to make it a thing in your practice, because I think it'll accelerate practice. But the NPS score, guys, I did work for one of the aligner companies. I will tell you that when they come in, they're happy they're getting aligners. That NPS satisfaction score drops off a cliff. Now, you may fool yourself when they come in and you say, are you wearing your aligners? You're supposed to be wearing them 22 hours a day. They're not. And we all know that aligners have a tough time finishing in probably somewhere around 40% of the cases. I have the data from the 2 major aligner companies, and it's because patient compliance is an issue. On braces and brackets, it's mind-boggling to me that you'd advertise a problem for 2 years and then you take them off. My kids both had braces, of course, before I joined this company. It was miserable. They loved their orthodontist. I'll keep them on my name.
Yes.
But when they talked about the orthodontist, by the time they were getting happy with their orthodontist, mom was scheduling the appointment with them, and they were like you could feel the tension in the room. And then they were super angry when they were in pain. And if you look at the InBrace experience, after you're through the first, say, 10 days, and you get used to a little bit of lisp, maybe you nick your tongue, the journey goes up because we can whiten the teeth. They see them straightening, they get there faster, and nobody knows they're doing it. And I have friends and family who put through this. So, if we have something that treats you with the compliance and the consumer gets what they want, and we can deliver it on time, and it minimizes disruption in your practice, you can make good money. We got to do it together.
Yeah. I like how you said, like, do it together. I think that goes both ways in terms of communication. And the beauty somewhat of what's occurred is we are a smaller team, right? So we can have more direct line of communication with our providers. So it does go both ways. So I say that for the providers on this call to give us all the feedback. We can only get better through knowing what's happening in your practices. Same thing with the promise regarding to the lead time, right? IRs within 8 days. That's our promise to you. DEs and cases within the turnaround time of 3 weeks. Like, that's our promise to you. We're saying this on this call, and moving forward, like, hold us to that. And if you're not seeing that, or if you're having disruptions, like, let us know so that we can improve on that. And also let us know the experiences that you're having. With that, I guess the same thing in terms of communication being a two-way street. Like, I'm asking providers to let us know so we have feedback and can better our company. We've had some providers who have been solid with us throughout this whole journey from day one. And one of the kind of gripes that I've heard from talking with those providers and colleagues is they did lose a little bit of confidence in InBrace, in us as a company, specifically in regards to feeling as though we didn't handle the situation that has come up and communicate it clearly to them or early enough to them. And so I'm asking providers to communicate to us In the same time, they have to know that we're communicating with them, right? So we spoke about it a little bit earlier, but now can you go into light of like what has happened in the last few months, and how we got to where we were, now to the point of funding, but like what really went down?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, this has probably been the thing that I've been most frustrated with and least proud of, is that in our particular situation, the truth is that we were having a near-death experience. And that's very frustrating as a CEO of something that I think is going to be as successful as this company is. And I think that applies to our external community, to our employees, to our vendors, in that we were unable to secure funding. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really because they were saying, hey, this product looks, I'll tell you what, the rap on us, I'm sure you hear gossip out in the marketplace. If you hear different than this, send them my way, particularly if they're a ding dong rep or another executive. We'll make WTF and I'll go woman o woman or mono womano or mono mono with them. We'll have our little, what's that guy? Dana, whoever the guy is, right? We'll have a cage match because you're going to hear straight from us what went on with InBrace. Um, Investors, one of our lead investors said, look, there is no doubt. They came in from overseas, and the CEO of this very large firm said, I came in, I didn't want to like you. I didn't want to like your team. I didn't want to like the product. And now that I've spent a day and a half with you, I love your team. I'm okay on you. And the product's phenomenal. I'm hearing from the patients. I'm watching the orthos. It works now. But that was a 10-year journey just to get it to work the way it's now investable in. And
Mm-hmm.
the question is now, as slow as orthodontists adopt and as much investments required, you need a lot more money to build a company. And I just don't know if I want to invest in that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't have a tough time securing money from investors because the product's not breathtakingly like awesome. It's going to require more money to make this the next great thing. And the reason for that is mass customization. Digital dental is very, very expensive. So we've got 238 in. Probably over the journey, we're going to need another 50 to 100 million. This company should go public, in my view. But when interest rates went up and inflation went up, it got more expensive to run the company.
Mm-hmm.
Money was more expensive. And so there was a massive shift in Wall Street towards profitability. I was actually brought into the company even when it was small because they're like, we don't need you yet, but we need you to take the company public. And you and John will be a great combo. That was
Mm-hmm.
straight from me what it was. And essentially, about a year and a half ago, the market just flipped. And there was no appetite from investors going to their investors to invest in big ideas that lost a ton of money. So the good news is these ebb and flow. It looks like interest rates are coming down. We'll probably get through this election. Something will happen, but ideas will normalize. And we have fantastic investors behind us in this round. And the focus is really on reducing our cost of goods.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk a little bit about, maybe in the next questioning, Tara, and then maintaining our small community of orthodontists and
Mm-hmm.
patients and channel checking that to see if you guys like it. But you will start hearing me. If this works for our ortho community and you want to hear me yapping every month, I'm happy to do that. Or if you want to see me at some of the society meetings and have a group or one-on-ones, I'm happy to tell you what's going on with our company. But I would say that not being able to communicate to our community, because I couldn't tell you,
Mm-hmm. We didn't know what to expect.
we're good, put your patient in it for 2 years or a year or 18 months or 6 months. I couldn't tell you that we could do that. I couldn't tell our employees, stick with me. I can guarantee you a job next year. And look, nobody feels sorry for CEOs. That's the job I signed up for. But I will say, if you work on my team, I'm not easy to work for, Tara, as you know.
No
But I
comment.
do, no comment. We're going to scrub that one out if we can. But I do shoot pretty straight, and I try to tell people like what's going well, what's not going well, what I need from them, ask them what they need from me. And so I can expect, if you're an orthodontist, that you are frustrated. Hopefully you can appreciate from my standpoint. It's a little bit like being a parent. If you've ever gone through like some tough situation, somebody that's sick in the family, something's going on with somebody in the family that you just can't tell the kids. And I'm not confusing my orthodontic community with kids or my employees, but it was my job to raise the money. It was my job to try to keep the company intact. It was my job to decide what we did and didn't communicate. And so you'll start to see much more frequent communication. I also was purposefully behind the scenes while John was the face of the company. But given what we've just gone through, I think the community deserves to hear from me directly, and understand like who's leading the future of InBrace. So hopefully that clears up any communication snafus on our part. But yeah, it wasn't good. I'm surprised you guys are with us and want to thank you for it.
1000%. And I think all encompassing in summary, like we communicated what we could when we could, essentially. Yeah. And that's why the importance of this call today, because we want to communicate more transparently all of it, for the understanding and the footing and alignment for everyone.
Hey, Tara, I hope I don't blow up your email or your text here, but I would say Tara and any of our orthodontists that are close, I told us the other day, I said, look, when you come to the leadership team table on our Monday meetings or our Friday huddles or during our strategy sessions, I need you wearing like a really strong ortho hat representing the community and just shooting straight, because none of us around the table understand what you bring to the table or your training. I hate when sales reps try to out-doctor the doctor. It drives me nuts. Fortunately, I'm a generalist. You'll never have to worry about me being too clinical on you or too techie on you. But when Tara comes to the leadership team meeting, she needs to represent the ortho community. So she needs to hear from you. When she's out there with you or at a trade show or study groups or these, she needs to have her leadership hat on. She's an executive. And that's where she'll be representing us. And if we do that right, Eric can come back with full immunity and say, this is what our orthodontists are saying. When she's out there with you, she can also say, look, you got to get over it. Developing this is hard. Yes, this happened, but here's what we're doing to fix it. Are you in or out? And you may be out for right now, but I think that's the delicate but important role that Dr. Poole plays, and we take that pretty seriously inside. The same thing when John's out there, or Dr. Robert Lee, or Dr. Andre, Dr. Tong, many of our Dr. Schwartz has been out there. Many of you guys have worked with. There's been a ton of orthos that have helped us get through this journey, and many that are starting to influence us. And you'll see from Tera and many of you guys know Mike Schultz, a renewed effort to get our ortho community, where some are influenced in R&D activities, some how we go back out to market, and some how we amplify this message to patients in the US, but ultimately globally. I think this will be a global company with a global footprint.
Yeah, you've shared the nugget around our KOLs or orthodontic influencers, kind of where we want to go, where we haven't been to date. But in the future, you will hear from myself and Michael Schultz, our head of commercial, in regards to building out some of those KOL teams or those orthodontic influencer teams. So aside from this webinar, a lot of you on this call will be tapped to have those discussions and help us be the Army moving forward into the future. And as you mentioned, kind of where we are now and moving forward, you mentioned at the very beginning of this call of like what level of support we provided for our providers. And personally, I was always shocked, really, at the level of support that we gave with having our TI assist chair side. Like, again, I was in private practice. Previously, it was the reps would bring donuts or come by for a second unless we had a major problem, then someone might come for an extended period of time. But really having essentially another assistant that can treat cases, not just InBrace cases, but also do there's orthodontic assistants, right? They can help in other areas as well, train TCs. But we had that level of kind of white glove, gold standard support previously. Now we've cut down with our sales force and our field support. And so what does organizing the company, you've spoken a little bit right now about my role. We've called out Mike Schultz as well as head of commercial. But what does the company organization look like now with this amount of employees that we have and team that we have? And then what can our providers expect in regards to support and training?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll start with, you're hearing the strategic plan from the CEO. All raises have a purpose to get to the next inflection point, next valuation point. It's no different than if you build your second or third or fourth practice. You go through, okay, when it fills up to this point, do I build a third? And what's that cost? So that's all I'm doing. This raise was designed to do two things. One is bring down our cost of goods to you. And ultimately, I think for this to be successful, It needs to be affordable for the patient, but I do believe this is a premium product, right? If we get the compliance of the braces, we get there faster and nobody knows it's happening. You can brush, floss, drink coffee, drink wine, whiten your teeth. It should be a little bit more. So if you're undercharging for InBrace or you're charging what you are for the other things, charge more. Patients will pay for it. It's new. Secondly is you have to make money. So for you to make money, I would charge more, and we'll be stable with our pricing, because ultimately we need to make more. And if we do this right, and I think Align's done a nice job of this, is make more patients aware of this so they come in and ask for it, charge the appropriate price. You should charge the appropriate price. So the economic ecosystem needs to work. The clinical ecosystem needs to work, probably first and foremost. The product has to work. The patient needs to be happy with the result. And we need to make sure that we can produce the product the way that we say it is. So we've got to make sure the clinical performance and the financial performance both work. That's the way consumer healthcare works, in my mind. But I think together to do that is super, super important. And Tera, say it again, because I got a little bit off track there. So
Talking about the organization of
Yes.
the company, right? And support and training for our providers.
Yep. Thank you. So what we've been doing on this raise is to really bring down the cost of goods sold. And we need to do that because there is no doubt now from investors globally that this product works, and increasing evidence that those of you who are using it say, yeah, I had this and this, but I love this product. And most of you say this is the future of orthodontics. And they just wonder, okay, they said that, why haven't they adopted like 100% in their practice? So you'll see us, trying to increase your adoption rate. But cost of goods sold is where we're focused. So there's a lot of people in manufacturing, the software team, our commitment to our team in India right now, where a majority we also have a small commercial team, mostly around the training to support you, and a team inside, as well as keeping our early orthodontists working around things that happen, which do, so we can provide you a concierge-like service. So we're sticking with roughly 225 to 250 orthodontists, and we think we're appropriately staffed. Assuming we're bringing down our cost of sales, assuming you're happy with our level of support, and we're seeing adoption in your practice, the next raise should be relatively easy, and you will see us go full throttle. So, when you talk about a near-death experience, it's often followed by the rise of the proverbial phoenix. And I think that's very much where InBrace should be. So if you're in our first 225 to 250, we're really focused on you and not bringing on new orthos, except for by exception. Your adoption rate helps us raise the next round. Your feedback helps us get better. And then we'll do what we need to on the other side. That's the only two things we're focused on. I'm going to have an all-hands meeting here in our factory in 4 hours. My employees are going to hear the same thing. So that's really what we're looking to do. And it's important to know that, we were losing $3,000 to $4,000 a case 2 years ago. And our goal is to kind of get to break even, so we won't be making money. And our investors to invest in this round just want to see improvements on adoption and the gross margin. So as Tera and Mike come out, we're in constant contact. We need feedback in. We'll tell you what we're doing. We should see adoption going. And that's the goal if we do this together. If you guys don't adopt faster, and if we're not doing what we should, company goes away. And I could dress that up for you. But I mean, many of you are investors, I assume. If you don't, if the technology is not working, if patients don't like it, and the provider doesn't like it, and nobody can make money, and why would the company exist? But I don't see that. I see PS scores at this stage that you're the master of steakhouse. Just build more of them, right? So I need you to earn more steaks and overpaying for the wine list. Maybe I'm bringing baggage from my dinner last night that I paid for.
Feel like there's something hanging over from that one.
But it's no difference. You wouldn't go, you make good money as an orthodontist if you're successful. That's why school's expensive. If school's expensive and you went out and got an hourly wage, probably would be different. So the economics, the clinical benefit needs to work. And we're busy on our side trying to do both, balance our community out there and keep them happy and supported, drive down cost of goods. We bring those together. It's my job, probably with many of you that'll be talking to investors, to put a lot of money in this company. This company should go public. This company should be worth tens of billions of dollars, and we have very high aspirations. But talking about that now, given what we just went through, would be irresponsible of the person that needs to run the company, keep our customers happy, and drive down the cost of sales. That's really, what I will be doing. I'll be communicating with you on a frequent basis.
Yeah, and I can say also from the level of support on the clinical side, right, leading the clinical teams, like we still have our clinical advisors, Dr. Robert Lee, you'll still see his name, helping out on cases, Dr. Sarah Pye, all our founding doctors are still assisting us in different realms. And then, as you mentioned, our study clubs, KOLs, will be tapping some of the external providers to lead some of those study clubs, help us with clinical trials and things we want to pilot. So the clinical support should not look any different either for our providers.
Yeah. I mean, and I probably should have mentioned Dr. Pye. I mean, Dr. Pye has been amazing in studio. Dr. Lee, Dr. Tong as an early, Dr. Andre out there, Dr. Schwartz, Dr. Hom. Like, I mean, the journey that our orthos, including you, Tera, have brought us through is really pretty incredible. And I don't see that going away. So, now I think it's getting to the point where we really have a pretty good feel of what we know, what we don't know, and how to get there. I mean, I look forward to bringing you through the plan. If you'd come through the plan, 2 years ago when I was on the board, it looked a lot like the early Align, where like they were hiring barbers to cut out the plastic, right? And for us, we were hiring people to bend the wire. But we're not that far away from a fully robotic manufacturing plant producing hundreds of thousands of these cases, getting them turned around into you in 7 to 10 days, and having consumers on social media and TV talking about this. So I think we got a winner here.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate both the journey that's been here. I would say that, like, to Pele's point, the hard part I think's been done. I mean, for some reason, I am just an absolute idiot, and that I sign up to both invest, lead, found, and run these companies that are white space. I just am incapable of working on things that are small ideas. Small ideas are always followers. You're chasing somebody's taillights, and honestly, maybe we're chasing Align's taillights. Maybe Damon system, Dr. Redman, I remember having dinner with him, who was an amazing friend of the company. I said, Ron, when did like Damon take off? He goes, oh, took a long time, but it's when patients started demanding it. Do you have the Damon system? No, click. And so I hope that's the case and that we get there together. But this company should be one of enormous value. And I hope that some of you have been investors in the company or have been stockholders. I hope that one day, like my old company, we made a lot of money for people with beauty, health, and with hydrofacial. They've kind of screwed it up since. It's back down to $200 million. Skins the ticker. But if you see when I went there, I mean, going to 4.5 billion, a lot of those people were our providers. And people have been on the journey with us, which was not always easy. So overnight success takes roughly a decade. We're hitting that this year.
Not
So
quite overnight.
I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to people telling us how easy it was, both on the provider side as well as the company side.
Yeah. And I know we're hitting the hour mark. So for those who have any questions, feel free to submit those. Again, you'll have a survey that you can ask those questions on, and we can follow up with you individually. Most everyone has stayed with us thus far. So I appreciate you guys staying on. We're entering our last question that we've had. So again, use the Q&A feature if you'd like. But earlier we mentioned that how hard it is to build a company. And so what can providers do? And I love seeing this question on the feedback from the registration. It came up a couple times about what can providers do individually to support us? And are we looking at any expansion outside of the US? Because we even had some providers sign up who are who are outside of the US market and want us to come to a different market.
That's great. One is send it in. We are collecting providers that could be early launch partners globally. The more I learned about the orthodontic community globally, or dentistry in general, we probably chose the hardest market, right? You delegate a lot of your treatments. You're comfortable with, wires and brackets. Align's done a great job here, as have some of the other players in aligners. And look, we have pretty efficient practices, right? Whereas you have the two-gloved ortho or dentist in a lot of the rest of the world, and they're more comfortable with lingual. I mean, the only thing lingual about this now is we're behind the teeth.
Yeah.
But I think our approach is entirely different, right? It's comfortable, slight learning curve, patient likes it. I mean, when you put your spouse in it, you get pillow talk focus group. That's serious, serious move by the CEO. So I think, we've got a very different player here, but we probably should have started in some of the markets that are super adaptable to this, like, Japan, Germany, the UK, France. So we want to get there as quickly as possible. And so if you're calling in from one of the other countries, India, please let us know, because we will be looking for partners or going direct in those markets as we re-commercialize. So super excited about that. What you can do to support us is what we talked about. I mean, my job as CEO, people are like, what's the CEO's job? It's super simple. I own the strategy, and I get a lot of help from Tera, for marketing, from my board. But I own the strategy. I own hiring the type of talent and people that we need to build the company. And so I own the culture, and I have great help from many, Jessica Solomon and Anna Martinez and the rest of the HR team here, which is involved with our ortho community. And then I own financial performance. So what I really need from you is I need straight feedback on what's working and what's not. But if you're sitting on the sidelines for us to be perfect, it's just not going to happen. I think the product is very good. I think patients love it. In the end, on these products, if the patients love it, that product wins. And I've seen the data. And like I said, I owe a great debt of gratitude, many of us do, for some of those that have come before us. We stand on their shoulders. But the way the future works, I mean, I've got a fully electric Porsche that's more rocket ship than car and more computer than car. But electric cars have been around since the 70s. They just were horrible until Musk decided they can be cool and fast and, play a symphony and for whatever reason pass gas. I don't understand that.
That's the greatest, though. I have to
Yeah,
say.
but
Yeah.
Tesla ushered in electric vehicles, and now I'm driving a car that the latest version can do like 1,140 horsepower. So, but people forget that Tesla was like weeks away from bankrupt in 2018, and Sergey Brin had to loan Musk $1 million. I mean, that was only 6 years ago. So the future is very hard to build. But if you're around InBrace, I believe that you're a future builder. You have your part in the future. I had an investor that's one of our investors in this, and when the company was on bended knee, I was doing a 4:35 a.m. walk on the beach. I'd be lying if I didn't say I was like feeling sorry for myself. And he's like, I won't curse because I think we're recording this, but he was like, stop being a pansy and shut up and, get off the beach and let's go raise some money on this round together. Because he said companies like InBrace require a team. And it requires more than just us, and it requires more than just you, and it requires our orthodontists. So let's go raise some money. And I'm super excited that we're at the finish line of this particular leg of the race.
Yeah.
So that's what I need from you. And also, like I heard from somebody I really loved the other day. They said, I love the technology. It works, and I've been involved in it, and I think it's better for all these reasons, but I don't offer that opinion to patients. That, like, my head swiveled around. I looked like the little child actor in The Exorcist, if you remember that one. It spins, and then
Creepy, but yes.
well, it was all in my brain. I tried to act CEO like, but like that makes no sense to me. I will tell you, like, my wife had braces, the whole headgear when she was a kid, and has great teeth, and she'll tell you that she never would have considered putting braces on to straighten her bottom arch. But now she tells everybody to listen, and that turned into a lot of our friends getting it and their friends' kids getting it. So to me, it's bizarre if you guys don't offer it as an option. Like if it's like that, I wouldn't offer it at all. But
Yeah.
I'm telling you, as somebody who's like, turning double nickels and been at this for 26 years now, you build a better facility, you treat patients better, you run your financials well, and you market the company well, and you provide a better clinical outcome, you win. And my last company with hydrofacial, I mean, like people told me I was just a little scrub brush for the face with a vacuum cleaner. That wasn't the type of technology we're building at InBrace. But now the company still, despite what's happened to it, still does $400 million in sales, which means providers doing probably somewhere around $3 billion of hydrofacial globally. So it's important for you to know that when we're fully commercial, for every dollar the patient spends with you, we'll take probably 20 to 25%, and you'll take 75%. So if I say that 2 years from now, we're going to be doing $2 billion of revenue, orthodontists out there, should be doing 10 to $12 billion. And you also have my commitment for the foreseeable future. I'd love to stay with our orthodontic community. I think that the way in which we move, this requires you to think and learn a little differently, requires you to trust, the wire to cook. Things do open, close, twist, turn, come back and forward a little differently. And I
Orthodontic.
feel a little uncomfortable because you're a bunch of neurotic, insecure overachievers that are control freaks, which is exactly what I want from my healthcare provider. So if we work together, it'll get you more comfortable with that, fully autonomous driving. I'm sure some of you have vehicles that are doing that. When you first do that, you take your hands off the wheel. You're like, this is freaky.
Don't want to do it.
I fly 400,000 miles a year. Flown like 7 million miles in my career. But I still am not the guy who gets up there and flies the plane.
Yeah.
There's more
Not.
competent pilots, and she and he are much more adept at doing that. So I recognize the pilot versus the passenger. But I get on planes all the time with pilots I don't know, because I believe that the airlines and the FAA have created a safe environment for me to do that. You'll see in our pitch deck, we got a little thing about the Wright brothers in there. I mean, I don't know who the hell decided to jump off a big sand hill and fly.
Yeah. Don't know
But,
how to do that.
but this is much different. But look, gang, braces were invented roughly 100 years ago. I know you're still putting them on. I know they're less expensive. I know you can work magic with them, but I would really encourage you to, not be jumping off, a sand dune to see if it works, and, maybe jumping in a Tesla and seeing if you can trust it. And that's where I think we are.
Nothing couldn't said it any better on that regard. With that, we are over time. And so we will get the questions compiled that have come through, and any ones that come through on the survey, and make sure we get some responses out for our providers here. But I know their time is valuable. Have patience. And many have hopped on. If you're on the East Coast, midday, probably your lunchtime. So thank you for eating lunch with us. For those on the West Coast, prior to starting your day, so you have a full day ahead of you with patient care. So thank you. And also thank you, Clint, for coming on board this morning, dealing with a traffic jam to get here for us promptly.
Yeah.
So that was
Hopefully,
fun.
if I was sweating, I'll say it now. And it wasn't related to our current funding situation. I thought about that, but we had planned to do this at our other office closer to my home. And many of you know how LA traffic works. And I received a call when I was brushing my teeth, which meant I was not through my prep, that said the power company said there's no power at that office for the day. And it said I was supposed to get here at 9:15, which is 15 minutes after you would have started. But somehow I slid in at 8:58. So if you have beat a sweat, if you could just please like Photoshop those out, Tera, so I look as amazing. You on the Zoom.
Up here.
Yes, that'd be helpful. But seriously, thanks everyone. That's the way life works. That's the way business works. Probably no different than in your practice. So I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Thanks.
Bye, guys. Bye.